Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've got a fascinating stack of source material here today, stuff that kind of pulls back the curtain on a world running parallel to ours, but definitely darker.
Yeah, this is pulled from excerpts of the Delta Green Agent's Handbook, the 2024 edition. And it's quite the read.
It seems to present this reality where, regular government agents, people you might recognize from the FBI or CIA, are secretly dealing with unnatural horrors.
Exactly. Horrors from beyond, as the text puts it. And it makes no bones about it. This fight comes at a shattering personal cost.
A shattering cost. Okay, so for you, our listener who brought this in, our goal today is really to unpack these pages. We want to pull out the key info, understand what the handbook says it means to be an agent in this world.
Yeah, get the mechanics, the feel, the texture of that experience based only on what these excerpts tell us.
We'll dig into the details, the kind of surprising bits, the underlying themes. It seems like this weird mix of familiar federal agencies and tradecraft.
And then, bam, mind-breaking sanity loss and threats that guns they just don't work on.
Right. Okay, let's dive in. Where do we start?
Let's go right to the core concept the handbook lays out. It says, basically, you are an agent. You fight unnatural horrors from beyond space and time.
Okay.
And it frames this, importantly, as a role-playing game manual. It's explaining how you, the player, step into the shoes of one of these agents within that fictional setting.
So it's not just background lore. It's like the instruction set for existing there.
Exactly. And this book, The Agent's Handbook, is specifically the player's view. Everything from the agent's perspective, how you build them, what they do, how the world impacts them.
Gotcha.
It definitely hints there's more going on, things the game master knows, but we're focused purely on what these pages give the agent.
Right. So what's the agent's actual mission, according to this handbook? Save the world, stop the apocalypse.
Well, on the surface, it sounds straightforward. Save lives, neutralize unnatural threats, conceal them so they don't cause more harm.
Sounds almost like a standard procedure.
It does, but then immediately the text pulls the rug out. It says, it is never that simple.
Okay.
There it is. It breaks down operations into two phases. First is investigation. You got to figure out what you're even dealing with, find clues, talk to witnesses if there are any left.
And if the investigation points to something unnatural.
Then you move to removal. And that doesn't always mean blowing it up. It means eliminating the threat with as little public notice as possible. Make it vanish. Quietly.
And you mentioned earlier this sense of uncertainty runs through everything.
It's presented as just a fundamental reality for Delta Green. Absolute clarity is never an option. The source even compares it to real-world intelligence work. You're always dealing with messy, incomplete intel.
Which has got to be terrifying when the intel involves, cosmic horrors.
Absolutely. And tied right into that uncertainty is the #1 rule.
Secrecy.
Don't talk about Delta Green. Never, ever reveal the existence of Delta Green. The handbook hammers this home. It's not just about being discreet, it's about survival. For the agent, for the group. Exposure means compromise, means disaster.
Okay, so let's follow that thread. If someone stumbles onto something unnatural, and their first thought is, I need to warn people, go public. What does the handbook say about that person?
It says something really chilling. It says, if your first instinct is to go public, it's likely you are not a Delta Green recruit, but a Delta Green mission.
Whoa. Okay. So the whistleblower becomes the problem.
Exactly. You become something Delta Green needs to contain or neutralize or cover up. It completely inverts that trope of the brave truth teller.
So who are they looking for then, if not the person trying to sound the alarm?
They want people who recognize the depth of the danger, but crucially also understand why it must be kept secret. People who can operate in the shadows.
And the handbook gives an example, right? This Michael Lumsden case.
Yeah.
To illustrate the kind of person who fits.
Yeah, it's presented as this sort of defining scenario. A kid disappears, comes back 10 years later, seems fine, but the agents find the real kid's body buried. Now they're left with this thing that looks like the child.
And no easy answers.
None. The handbook lays out the questions the agent faces. Do you kill this child thing? Can you? What about the parents? Are they changed? Infected? And there's no higher authority giving clear orders, just take care of it.
That's yeah. Heavy stuff.
And the core question it leaves the agent with is how could they live with themselves if they made the wrong call, or even the right one? It's about the weight of impossible choices.
And then it turns that right back on the reader, on you.
Yes. It follows up immediately by asking, what kind of a person joins a group that has to make those kinds of decisions? You. It forces you to confront that ethical quagmire head on.
Okay, so we have the horrifying world. the impossible choices. How does the handbook actually build the agent who has to navigate this? What are the nuts and bolts?
It lays out 5 core building blocks: statistics, derived attributes, skills, bonds, and profession. These are like the character sheet fundamentals in this game system.
Let's start with stats. What are they?
6 core abilities: strength, STR, dexterity, DEX, constitution, CON, intelligence, INT, power, POW, and charisma, CHA. Standard stuff for RPGs, really. They range from 3 to 18, average is 10.
How do you get them? Roll dice.
You can roll 4d6, drop the lowest die, assign the 6 results, or you can use a point-buy system, distributing 72 points, or pick a preset array. The book stresses they're all important.
And derived attributes. What comes from those stats?
These are calculated ratings: hit points, HP, for physical damage; willpower points, WP, for mental grit, like fuel; sanity points, SAN, which is your grip on reality; and the breaking point, BP, a threshold for mental breakdown.
Okay, sanity. This sounds like where that shattering personal cost really kicks in mechanically. How's it work?
Your starting sanity is your POW score times 5. Simple enough. But here's a really interesting, kind of grim twist. Your maximum possible sanity is capped at 99, minus your rating in a skill called unnatural.
Wait, hold on. So the more I actually learn about the unnatural stuff I'm fighting, the lower my potential sanity gets. That seems backwards. Shouldn't knowing more help you cope?
You'd think so, right? But the handbook implies that true understanding of these cosmic horrors is inherently corrosive to the human mind. Knowing is damaging. The mechanic directly links learning about the threat to a reduced capacity for sanity. It's a nasty paradox baked right in.
Wow, okay. And what happens if your sanity hits rock bottom? 0 SMM.
That's game over for the player's control. The agent becomes irretrievably insane. The handler takes over the character. Their fate becomes part of the story, not the player's choices.
And the breaking point, BP. What's that about?
That's your starting sanity minus your POW score, so it's a lower number. When your current sanity drops to or below your breaking point number, you instantly gain a long-term mental disorder, like PTSD, paranoia, dissociation, whatever fits the trauma. And here's the kicker. After you gain a disorder this way, your breaking point gets reset.
Reset, you mean it can happen again?
Exactly. You suffer more SAN loss, hit the new lower breaking point, and bam, another disorder. It's not a gentle slide into madness. It's described more like a series of sudden psychological snaps.
Brutal. Okay, moving on from attributes. Agents have skills too. What do they cover?
Skills represent specific, specialized training or knowledge. Things your agent knows how to do beyond just general smarts or common sense.
Do they start with some baseline?
Some do, some don't. Many critical skills like anthropology, archaeology, SIGINT, even things like art start at 0%. You literally cannot use them unless your profession gives them to you or you get specific training.
So you can't just wing it with some things?
Nope. Others start with a base percentage like drive, firearms, unarmed combat, start around 10-40%. Occult starts at 10%. The max you can get is 99%.
Can you give some examples? What does anthropology do? Or occult?
Sure. Anthropology, 0%. Lets you understand living cultures, customs, maybe identify obscure languages, navigate unfamiliar social situations. Archaeology, 0%, is for studying physical remains, dating artifacts, identifying dead languages.
And occult, 10%. Is that like magic?
Not really performing it, no. It's about understanding the supernatural through human belief systems. So conspiracy theories, occult traditions, fringe science, cryptozoology. It helps you deduce ritualistic intent, identify secret societies, that sort of thing.
Okay. What about SIGINT?
Signals intelligence, 0%. That's your electronics, spycraft encryption, surveillance tech, bugs, code breaking, even Morse code.
And then there's that unnatural skill, 0%. Again, the one that lowers your max SAN.
Right. You only gain points in this by directly encountering unnatural phenomena. But every point you gain makes you potentially less sane overall. It's that terrible trade-off again. The knowledge you need to survive actively damages your psyche.
How do professions fit in? Your day job?
Your profession is huge. It defines your starting kit of skills and also determines how many bonds you start with. The book even suggests ideal stats for some roles, like needing good strength and dexterity for a police officer, or intelligence and charisma for a lawyer.
And it links your job to how you got into Delta Green.
Yeah, the character creation prompt is literally what op brought you to the attention of Delta Green. It grounds your entry into the secret world in your mundane professional life. It gives examples like intelligence analysts or police officers, showing the wide range of backgrounds.
Okay, last building block. Bonds. What are these?
Bonds are described as relationships with the vital people in his or her life, Loved ones, family members, and close friends, they are absolutely crucial.
Crucial how? What do they do in the game?
They're your anchor to humanity. Mechanically, they help you resist sanity loss. You can use them to try and repress temporary insanity or fight off the effects of a disorder, but they're fragile. The text says they can be damaged. When something strains that relationship, maybe you miss an important event, lie, or just withdraw, you might have to check a box next to that bond, and it stays damaged, potentially affecting things, until you have a home scene to try and mend it.
So your connections suffer, and there's a special delta green bond.
Yes, a special bond, delta green. This is where the isolation theme really comes through mechanically. The handbook explains that powerful bonds form between teammates because of the sheer trauma they endure together.
How does that work?
When something catastrophic happens to the team, someone goes insane, gets a new disorder, is badly injured or killed, or just under extreme stress, you might make a sanity test. If you fail it, you can actually form new bonds with your teammates or increase the strength of existing ones.
Wow. So the horror you share literally forces you closer together, even as it potentially pushes your normal life away.
That's exactly the implication. Your connections to your family, your friends, they get worn down by the job, by the secrecy, by the sand loss. But the shared nightmare deepens your reliance on the only people who could possibly understand your fellow agents. It's a grim codependent cycle.
Okay, that paints a really vivid picture of the agent's internal landscape. Let's shift to how they interact with the world, the mechanics of crisis. When do you actually roll the dice?
The handbook is pretty clear, not for everything. If it's a routine task, something your agent is good at, and the situation isn't pressured, no roll needed. Without rolling means randomness is not a factor. You just do it.
So rolls are saved for the important moment.
Exactly. You roll when the outcome is in doubt. Specifically, during a crisis, when things are chaotic, not under your agent's control, or if the agent just isn't skilled enough for the specific challenge, the handler decides if it's a stat or skill test.
And failure isn't just nothing happens.
Definitely not. The book states point blank, failing a skill roll means ugly things are going to happen.
Ugly things. Okay, so what are the possible outcomes of a roll?
4 main results from the percentile dice roll. Critical success, you nail it, exceptional result. Success, you do what you intended. Failure, you don't succeed and maybe something bad happens, or you succeed but with an unpleasant complication. The handler determines the fallout.
And the fourth?
Fumble. This is bad. Rolling 0-0, which counts as 100, is always a fumble. Or if you fail a roll and the 2 dice show matching numbers, like rolling 55 when you needed 50 or less, or 88 when you needed 30 or less, a fumble always fails, and it brings additional catastrophic consequences.
Like what?
The book gives examples like crashing your car during a chase, your gun jamming at the worst possible moment, or even accidentally shooting yourself or someone else. It injects that element of lethal, unpredictable failure.
Yeah, that sounds like it keeps the tension high. How does the handbook handle time during stressful situations?
It breaks it down. Turns are for combat or intense crises, very short, maybe a few combat rounds, or about a minute total in real time. Minutes are for quick tasks outside that immediate pressure. Hours allow for a couple of significant actions per day. Days cover longer investigations or travel. And long term is for stuff between missions like research or training.
You mentioned willpower points earlier, WP, as mental fuel. How does that play out?
WP is what you spend to resist fear, coercion, or push yourself harder, but you don't have much. Running low, like down to 1 or 2 WP, can trigger an emotional breakdown.
And exhaustion impacts this too.
Yeah, exhaustion comes from lack of sleep, often after losing sanity or hit points. It costs you WP, 1d6 points, and can give penalties to your rolls until you get a full night's rest.
But sleep might not come easy after trauma.
Right. If you've suffered temporary insanity or gained a new disorder, you have to make a sanity test to sleep soundly. Fail, and you wake up panicked. No rest for the wicked or the traumatized, it seems.
Let's get into combat. The handbook's description sounds pretty intense.
It uses words like chaotic, frightening, and fast. It emphasizes the inescapable randomness. Even highly skilled agents can just get unlucky and die.
It connects this to Lovecraft.
Explicitly. It mentions the doomed raid on Innsmouth, the fate of Pickman's model, the general futility in the original Call of Cthulhu stories. It contrasts this with modern military focus on human enemies, suggesting it's hubris when these other things exist.
And the big takeaway is that combat isn't the answer to the real problems.
That's a core theme hammered home. Combat rarely resolves unnatural threats, and it gives that fantastic chilling quote, comparing human weapons against these entities to an ant wielding a pebble against a bulldozer.
So trying to just shoot the monster is usually a bad idea.
Often futile, yeah. It reinforces that Delta Green isn't an action movie where you blast the alien, it's something else.
Okay, but combat does happen. How does it work mechanically?
Uh,
The basics.
It uses turns, roughly 3 seconds each. In your turn, you can take actions, attack, move, use an item, etc. Defense is crucial. You can dodge attacks, making you harder to hit, especially if you use cover. Or in melee, you can fight back, trying to block and potentially hit your attacker. But taking actions limits your defense.
How's damage work? Is it deadly?
It can be. Weapons have damage dice like 1d8 for a light pistol, maybe 2d8 for a point-blank shotgun blast. Unarmed is weak, like 1d4 minus 1. But then there's the lethality rating system.
Lethality, what's that for?
It's for attacks that are just overwhelmingly powerful for a human heavy, machine guns, explosions, artillery, potentially some monster attacks. Instead of rolling tons of dice, the attack has a lethality percentage, say 10%, 20%, 30%. You roll percentile dice against that percentage.
And if you succeed, the lethality roll.
The target takes damage equal to the lethality rating directly to their hit points. So a 20% lethality hit deals 20 HP damage. For a normal human agent, that's almost certainly instantly fatal.
Wow. And if you fail the lethality roll?
It still hurts. The target takes significant normal damage, usually between 2 and 20 HP. And the handler can often just declare that anyone caught in the kill radius of something like an artillery strike is simply dead. No roll needed.
Pretty cool radius.
Yeah.
That has a psychological effect too, right?
It does. If you know you're in the target zone of an area attack, like suppressing fire or a grenade, your fear-riddled nervous system, as the book puts it, forces you to hit the dirt or find cover. If you want to act normally despite that incoming death, you have to spend 1 sanity point to overcome the fear. It costs you mentally just to be targeted like that.
So how do agents even survive combat?
Protection helps. Body armor reduces normal damage by its armor rating. It can also reduce the damage from a failed lethality roll. But the handbook states very clearly, armor does nothing whatsoever against a successful lethality roll.
So body armor won't stop that heavy machine gun bullet if it hits squarely.
According to this, no. Cover hiding behind solid objects is often much better protection than wearing armor.
And the threats aren't just bullets and claws.
No, the handbook covers other dangers too. Disease and poisons usually require a constitution test, Con 5, to resist or take half effect. Being diseased stops natural healing and risks relapse if you get hurt again. Hospitals give a bonus to resist.
What else? Suffocation? Fire?
Suffocation deals damage every turn, ignores armor completely. Fire deals damage based on intensity, from a candle doing 1 point per turn up to major fires having a lethality rating, like 10% per turn. You need a dexterity test, Degex 5, to avoid catching fire, and raging fires also cause suffocation. Cold drains constitution over time.
And even if you survive the physical fight, there's an aftermath.
Always. The text explicitly says violence damages sanity. You make sanity rolls just for being in a deadly fight, for getting hurt, for killing someone. Plus, you have to deal with the consequences, assessing casualties, maybe covering things up. It's never clean.
Which brings us right back to sanity, the core cost.
Yeah, the handbook really emphasizes sanity as that measure against losing control, tied directly to facing the unnatural and the overall shattering personal cost. It even mentions that if an agent doesn't lose sand from something horrific, it might be adaptation, or it could be denial, a player choice that might have later consequences.
What are the main triggers for sand loss mentioned?
The handler uses guidelines, but the 3 big categories specifically called out are violence, seeing it, doing it, being subjected to it, helplessness, being trapped, powerless, seeing others suffer, and the unnatural, direct exposure to the incomprehensible.
And how does losing sand lead to the really bad stuff like insanity?
There's a progression. Lose 5 or more sand points from a single event, and you risk temporary insanity. The book details different reactions, like fleeing you just bolt in terror for a number of rounds based on your con score, or until you think you're safe, then you collapse, exhausted. Temporary insanity might fade on its own or need therapy. But the disorders, those are worse. You gain a disorder every single time your current sanity drops to or below your breaking point.
And since the breaking point resets each time, you can accumulate multiple disorders.
Yes. The handbook gives lists of potential disorders and even links them loosely to the type of drama. Violence might lead to things like Anxiety, depression, PTSD, or even specific phobias like lygerophobia, fear of loud noises.
And helplessness or the unnatural.
Those might trigger things like amnesia, depersonalization, dissociative identity disorder, fugue states, intense paranoia, sleep disorders, OCD, or even megalomania or strange totemic compulsions. The nature of the horror can literally shape the way your mind breaks.
Is there any way back? Can agents recover sanity or cope?
There are mechanisms, yes. Psychotherapy is a skill. A successful role can reduce the severity of a disorder and temporary insanity or regain a small amount of sanity, like 1 in D4 points.
That sounds hopeful.
There's also self-care engaging in a meaningful personal pursuit outside of Delta Green. Making a SAN test might let you regain 1 AN or potentially 1 E4 SAN.
Okay, but didn't you say there's a cost even to self-care?
Yes, here's that grim trade-off again. If you succeed on the self-care roll to regain sanity, you must reduce the value of one of your bonds by 1 point. Your personal life suffers as you try to heal your mind. Similarly, gaining a new skill through special training between missions also costs you 1 point from a bond.
So even getting better or finding solace damages your connections. That's relentless.
It really underscores the pressure. You can also try to repress insanity using a bond. If you're about to have a temporary insanity episode or a disorder flare-up, you can make a SAN test, drawing strength from that relationship. But if you fail the test, the bond itself is damaged by 1 ED4 points.
And projecting onto a bond.
That's even more direct. When you take a big SAN hit, you can choose to project onto one of your bonds. This lets you have the amount of sanity you lose from that specific trauma.
Okay, that sounds useful. What's the catch?
The catch is, whether you succeed or fail the subsequent sanity test for that trauma, projecting always damages the bond you used by 100 D4 points. You're literally sacrificing your relationship to protect your mind. Bonds are both your shield and your vulnerability.
And the final stop is permanent insanity at 0 SN.
Right. Irretrievably insane. Handler takes over the character. Maybe they become catatonic, delusional, psychopathic. The agent, as the player knew them, is gone.
It's clear the mechanics really drive home that personal cost. It's not just flavor text.
Not at all. Sanity and bonds are the core mechanics tracking the agent's slow disintegration under pressure.
All right, so agents are fragile, psychologically scarred. How do they get the tools they need? Guns, gear, information. The handbook covers assets and access.
Yeah, you start with some basic gear based on your profession, but getting anything specific during an ops depends. Is it common? Restricted? Black market only? The handler decides what's realistically available.
And cost is a factor, using expense categories.
Right, from incidental stuff up to standard, unusual, major, and extreme expenses. The higher the category, the harder it is to get, especially through official channels.
What's the official way? Requisitioning through your agency.
That's the standard path. It usually requires a bureaucracy or military science skill roll. Getting more expensive stuff imposes penalties on that roll, like negative 20% for major, negative 40% for extreme. High priority ops might give a bonus, low priority a penalty.
But there's a big downside to going official.
Huge. The handbook warns about unwanted oversight and review. Every official request creates an extensive paper trail, and that trail risks exposing more people to the horrors.
Because some bean counter or supervisor might notice a weird request for, say, tranquilizer darts or digging equipment for a supposed tax audit.
Exactly. The very systems designed for accountability become liabilities when your real mission has to stay utterly secret. The source notes some roles, like program managers, might be able to fudge things with an accounting role, but failure means getting caught.
And getting caught is bad.
Very bad. Failure might just mean you don't get the item, or it could mean disciplinary action, a reprimand. For major or extreme requests, failure could lead to being fired or even prosecuted for misuse of government resources.
Okay, so official channels are slow, bureaucratic, and risk exposing everything or ending your career. What's the alternative?
Calling in a favor. This is using your personal connections, specifically your bonds. You find someone you have a bond with who's in a position to help, and you make a charisma test, CHA5.
But that's risky too.
Definitely. The source says it looks shady, can have potentially ugly consequences, and always risks damaging the bond you used. If you fail the roll, the bond value drops by 1. A fumble is worse.
And lying about why you need the favor.
Damages the bond even more if discovered, but telling the truth. The handbook says that opens up a whole world of unwanted consequences for the person who helped you once they realize what they got involved in. Again, your personal life is on the line.
Man, no easy choices. What about restricted stuff, like heavy weapons, or things you definitely shouldn't have?
Often requires black market contacts. That might involve a computer science role to find sellers on the dark web, with the risk of legal trouble on a fumble. Crafting is another option. If you have the skill, you can make some things yourself, reducing the effective expense category.
Can't Delta Green itself just give you gear?
Yeah.
Like from a secret stash?
The book basically says, maybe ask your handler. A control officer might use their own bureaucracy skill, or maybe the op gets high priority status. But even then, Delta Green resources usually must be justified by some pretext, risking exposure. The handbook states pretty clearly, the most important asset Delta Green has is the agents themselves. People, not gear.
The examples of requisitions really show that risk of review. What kind of things trigger scrutiny?
Lots of things. Underintelligence. Accessing classified files, unusual expense. Getting a drone flyover, unusual. Holding a prisoner, unofficially unusual, all illicit review. Extreme stuff like a missile strike off U.S. soil only, or deploying a covert team definitely does.
Even mundane stuff.
Yeah, under public safety. Getting official credentials, standard. Accessing sensitive case files, standard. Asking local cops to arrest someone, standard. Getting a warrant, standard. The handbook says these also elicit review. Using your day job's power for DG purposes always leaves tracks.
So you're constantly dancing around the system.
Constantly. The book also mentions using illicit cash, maybe from DG, maybe stolen, which can bypass roles for standard purchases, but can't get you things only official channels provide. It's a world of workarounds and risks.
It makes sense why they need agents embedded in so many different places. The handbook details a lot of these agencies, the alphabet soup.
Right. The agents cover is their real job. FBI, CIA, military are common, but it emphasizes nearly any profession could be involved. It breaks them down into law enforcement, defense, intel diplomacy, and public safety categories.
Let's run through some key ones. FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Lead federal law enforcement, Quantico training, top secret clearance needed. Strengths, broad authority, lots of resources, vehicles, tech, SWAT, legal power, friction, bureaucracy, politics, don't anger Congress, stressful work. Playing an FBI agent involves paperwork and street investigations. Not very glamorous, focus on arrests, hating the paperwork.
DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration.
Focused on drug laws, often international, strengths, tough agents, good training, no prior drug use allowed. Works well with local cops on task forces, international presence. Friction, more paperwork, making sure locals get credit. The book says long-term, deep undercover is mostly a myth. Plain DEA is similar. Paperwork, street work, hands dirty, clear mission, professional pride.
ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
2 parts. ERO removes undocumented immigrants. HSI investigates transnational crime, smuggling, fraud, etc. HSI is more relevant for DG, with intel units, international posts, SWAT teams, called SRT. Training is long, agents serve anywhere. Friction, high burnout, internal divisions maybe seem as less sophisticated, though book attributes that to marshals. Playing IC means starting near the border, then moving inland, loyalty tested.
U.S. Marshal Service, USMS.
Core job is warrants, fugitives, protecting courts. Strength, nationwide reach, lead fugitive task forces, elite volunteer tactical teams, SOG. Friction, seen as unsophisticated and ham-fisted by other agencies. Jurisdictional clashes. Playing a marshal means being tough but honorable, appreciating local help.
Then the military branches, Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, they share common ground.
Definitely. Hierarchy, bureaucracy, strong unit cohesion, lots of jargon, TDY, temporary duty, support to other agencies, need to respect rank, deep knowledge of gear expected, friction, constant red tape for travel purchases unless on secret ops.
Army specific.
Largest branch holds ground. Strengths, well-equipped, strong unit pride, has the intelligence support activity, ISA, and crucially, U.S. SAMR, the Army's infectious disease lab. Playing Army means focus on training, gear, maybe combat vet identity.
Air Force.
Air and space power, very technical. Pilots are key. Strength, high-tech focus, specialized units like pararescue PJs, combat controllers, CCT. Majors, SIGINT wings, cyber command. Friction, reputation, brash pilots, maybe less grounded. Playing Air Force is about precision, tech, complex systems.
Navy.
Sea power, very diverse roles. Ships, subs, planes. Has NCIS for investigations. Navy medicine is often forward deployed. Strengths, adaptable professional. DVGRU, part of SOCOM. Friction, internal rivalries, pilots versus pilots, subs, or insular. Playing Navy means adaptable, professional, comfortable anywhere.
Marine Corps.
Expeditionary force, part of Navy, but distinct culture. Strengths, fierce warrior identity, once a Marine. Strong traditions, counterterrorism focus, embassy guards, strong us versus them mentality. Friction, seen as rough, unruly, and violent, tight non-combat budgets, wary of outsiders. Playing Marine means elite mindset, confidence, high
And
standards.
SOCOM, Special Operations Command.
Oversees all the elite units, Delta, DVGRU, etc. Reports directly to top leadership. Strengths: highly autonomous, great funding. Some get credit lines like CIA, gear, intel access. Big focus on planning. Friction: complex command structure. Services try to pull them back. Playing SOCOM is demanding, focused on competence, stamina, action over talk.
CIA,
Yeah.
Central Intelligence Agency.
Foreign intelligence focus. Directorate of Operations, DO, runs spies, recruits assets using MICE, money, ideology, compromise, ego. Special Activities Division, SAD, does paramilitary and political influence. Tech Division, DSNT. Strengths: clandestine expertise, asset handling, paramilitary ops, tech R&D, cover identities, shell companies embedding. DO officers can get significant credit lines, big expense accounts for covert work, friction, constant security risks, maintaining cover, paranoia is part of the job. Getting caught is career-ending or life-ending. Playing CIA means focusing on intel gathering, blending in, managing paranoia.
Department of State, DOS. Seems different.
Lead on foreign policy, diplomats, FSO, diplomatic security, DIA, strengths. Diplomacy gets you access, good crisis response, coordinates U.S. agencies abroad. Friction: diplomats might oppose aggressive actions, smaller resources than did on CIA. Playing a diplomat means adaptable, smart, good under pressure, often underestimated.
Lastly, public safety agencies. Less common, but CDC and EPA get focus.
Right. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. Focus on public health, infectious diseases, bioterrorism. Strengths: deep scientific expertise, national security role, gives huge access to lab tech, approval for just about anything. Quarantine authority, rarely used, high scrutiny. Portable labs, good PPE. Friction: bureaucratic, slow equipment requests, agents seen as brilliant but socially awkward. Playing CDC means being a researcher at heart, practical, cutting-edge science.
And EPA, Environmental Protection Agency.
Fights pollution, chemical risks. Has a criminal investigation division, CID, with armed special agents who investigate environmental crimes and related fraud obstruction. Strengths: CID has arrest power, can get specialized science surveillance gear, like ground-penetrating radar. Friction: disliked by businesses, CID agents can't requisition extra tactical gear through EPA. Playing EPA CID means focusing on environmental crime investigation. So agents bring all this baggage, skills, access, biases, limitations from their day jobs right into Delta Green.
And because they have to operate outside those official structures so often, they need this whole other skill set. Tradecraft, the art of secrecy.
Yeah, the handbook bundles together various techniques for operating off-book. Things like breaking and entering, which combine skills like stealth, athletics, maybe craft skills for locks or alarms, and forensics to cover your tracks. Search and arrest uses law, criminology, forensics.
Interrogation isn't just asking questions, you said.
No, it's presented as a process. It takes time, uses the persuade skill, building rapport is key, threats might work with help. But the book warns, information gained through pain or panic is unreliable. Drugs might lower resistance, needs pharmacy skill, but risk poisoning. It's not foolproof.
Recruiting human assets uses humanity and that MICE principle again.
Right. Finding informants. And medical treatment is a big one. You can't take your gibbering teammate to the ER, so you need off-the-books care. That might mean using criminology to find a shady doctor, expensive, cash up front, or just breaking into a clinic yourself using B&E skills.
Evidence tampering is explicitly mentioned as necessary.
Disturbingly, yes. You might need stealth to grab something from a crime scene before official investigators arrive. Or, if it's already logged, you might need accounting, bureaucracy, computer science, or law skills to alter records or break the chain of custody. Forensics helps clean up afterward.
And disposing of bodies. Seriously.
Seriously, the handbook states flatly it's often required because Delta Green operations seem to always leave bodies behind. It suggests methods like using an acid barrel, unusual expense, or bribing an incinerator operator, major expense via criminology.
That's incredibly grim. It really shows the dark necessities of this work. Communications are also paranoid.
Utterly paranoid about tech interception. NSA decryption farms are mentioned. The emphasis is on old-fashioned brush passes and dead drops. Even crypto is seen as potentially breakable. The term burning in the glossary, meaning rapid disease spread, is even linked to compromised comms somehow.
Safe houses provide secure spots, but can be compromised or burned. Getting them costs money or, again, damages bonds.
All these tradecraft skills highlight the reality. Agents operate outside the law, outside official channels, constantly cleaning up messes and hiding their tracks, not just from the public, but from their own agencies, too.
The glossary section adds another layer with all the jargon.
It really does. You've got official terms: agent, handler, cell, the different ents, elant, joint, human, etc. Classification levels like SCI, SAP, eyeballs only, system names like Prism or domain management.
Operation types, covert action, overt, surgical strike.
And then the slang, which gives it flavor. Alphabet soup, company for CIA. Cousins, British slang for CIA. Firm, MI6. Puzzle Palace, NSA. Five Eyes Intel Alliance.
Things like notional for fake fronts, proprietary company for agency covers, zombie for faking death, flap for confusion, foxtrot for escaping, material support for helping terrorists, millenarian for doomsday cults.
And those evocative ones. Mogul, the real Roswell project, apparently. URA, Marines. Night at the Opera, current slang for a DG mission. Plus, terms like tagged, having DG clearance, TDY, temporary duty, throwaway, untraceable gun, turned, agent defects, walk-in, potential defector, watchers, surveillance.
There are terms like burning, cattle mutilation, linked to UFO cults fraud, hot zone, WMD, gear like bubble stretcher or Chemturian spacesuit, hazmat suits, even soap for sodium pentothal truth serum.
Yeah, the slang reinforces how insular these groups are, especially Delta Green itself. It's a secret world with its own language.
So pulling it all together, the agent's fragility, the agencies, the dirty tricks, it all comes back to that core theme, doesn't it? The shattering personal cost.
Absolutely. Look at the mechanics constantly reinforce it. Damaging bonds isn't just a penalty, it's tracking the erosion of your human connections. Self-care costs you bonds. Training costs you bonds. Calling in favors costs you bonds.
And while those outside connections weaken, the bonds inside the Delta Green team get stronger through shared trauma. It forces this intense, maybe unhealthy reliance on each other.
Exactly. And sanity isn't just a health bar for your mind, it's the measure of how much the horror is breaking you. Gaining disorders is the tangible cost of seeing and fighting the unnatural.
And that futility aspect, the ant and bulldozer thing about combat.
It adds this layer of existential dread. You're fighting things you can barely understand, often with tools that don't work, sacrificing your mind, your life, your relationships, often just to contain something, not defeat it.
Which leads back to the Lumsden case question. Why? Given the cost, the futility, the fear, the secrecy, why does anyone become or stay a Delta Green agent?
What drives them? Is it duty, the broken remnants of their old bonds, the intense new bonds with the team, or just this, I don't know, grim realization that someone has to stand in the dark even if it destroys them? The handbook doesn't give an easy answer.
And that feels like a good place to wrap up our deep dive into these agents' handbook excerpts.
Yeah, we've covered a lot. The world, the agent's mechanics, the brutal reality of sanity and bonds, the bureaucratic nightmares, the necessary evils of tradecraft, the agencies they hide within, and even some of that specific chilling jargon.
We really hope this exploration has given you, our listener, a solid, detailed feel for the world presented in these sources, highlighting the unique blend of the mundane and the cosmically terrifying and the profound cost of being an agent within it.
And it leaves us with a final thought for you. Based on all this talk of cost and consequence, given everything the handbook details, the damaged relationships, the fractured minds, the frequent inability of force to solve the real problems, the constant deception, is the agent portrayed here truly a savior? Or are they just engaged in a desperate losing battle, sacrificing their own humanity to merely postpone the inevitable? What does winning even mean in this kind of fight?